Estamos comenzando en 2 minutos.
We start in 2 minutes.
Buenas tardes. Vamos a dar inicio a nuestro último panel de la tarde.
Good afternoon. We're going to begin our last panel for this afternoon, a look to Metaverse through Meta. And now Luis Alejandro Henriquez, first Vice President of the Association, Venezuela, who will then give a presentation of the introduction of today's speaker and now the introduction video. A look to Metaverse through Meta. Paula Vargas, Meta, Argentina. And moderator is Luis Henriquez, Vice President on ASIPI, Venezuela. Good afternoon to everyone. And welcome to this last talk today. I know you're a little tired, but it's going to be a very interesting talk. And during all day, we have been learning increasingly what Metaverse is. We saw a bit of the implications it could have in intellectual property and in general, and we've also seen some transactions that happen in Metaverse and many other relevant aspects. In this talk, we'll invite you to give a Metaverse a view, but in this case, through Meta, that, as you know, is one of the big players who are leading the development of this virtual space, or Web 3. And who better to guide us in this immersion than Paula Vargas. She is the Director of Privacy Policy in Meta. For those who don't know her, she's Argentinian. She is an alumni of the University of Córdoba. She has a degree of the Berkeley University, California, master's degree in corporate law, Palermo University, specialization in legal economy and energy, specialization in environmental law, and she has been also a professor. She's been very studious. Before we start this discussion with Paula, I would like to give you some interesting data of Metaverse, although we have seen today several that I thought were interesting when I was preparing these questions. And for instance, Universal Music Group, leader in entertainment, And Jen is a leading company in technology for avatars, a partner to develop avatars, and joined the souvenirs of the famous artists they represent. And we'll very soon see these artists singing and selling their products in Metaverse. Even Light opened a tavern in Metaverse with a virtual beer and classic bar games. Panela Bread and Vitolas have expressed their request to sell virtual food and drinks in Metaverse. Fortnite, a company we know a lot about, which is linked to many brands, partnered with the French chain Hypermercados Carrefour, and they created Healthy Map game. In this game, the players must eat healthy in the Carrefour virtual markets, and they must recover their life and their character. And the game pursues better eating habits in young people of the real world, and of course, a new way to promote their brand. And for the lovers of Real Madrid, the team has presented a Real Madrid virtual world who will allow to have virtual visits to Santiago Bernabeu Stadium and to create avatars. And very soon we'll be watching the games and, of course, their great wins. So the story of Metaverse, it seems to be just starting. We have seen today a simple view. It seems to be a space that will generate new business, but also where legal complex situations will come about, which must be resolved by existing standards, jurisprudence, or by self-regulation of those who interact, or the big companies that interact in this space. So with this preamble, Paula, let's go to the first question. We just saw how Meta was transformed. So can you explain a bit how was that transformation from Facebook to Meta? And also something interesting you said when we started is what Mark Zuckerberg's views on Metaverse. Thank you, Luis. Well, first I wanted to wish you a good afternoon and thank you for being here and in person, because I know it's the end of the day, and I want to highlight the in-person because something we have all been reiterating throughout the day is that beyond just speaking about Metaverse and all these new virtual worlds, nothing replaces the fact that we're together, and the fact that having this contact, this personal contact. But when this cannot happen because of physical situations, because distance does not allow, or because of personal situations, being close to someone, the reality is that digital world can help us to feel connected. I think we all saw this in these past years during the pandemic. And for us, being a company with the mission of connecting people, that's the company's mission, which has not changed with the change of name. So this means looking at our existing products and imagine how they evolve for the time we spend connected to be a better used time, because it's also about that. It's not about spending more time. It's not about being connected for a longer time, but how to better use and how to have a better experience in this digital world with the time we currently spend in a multiplicity of activities in internet. So in this about looking at this, I was reading in one of the several posts we discussed in the company regarding Metaverse. I saw an example. Our head of diversity gave, our global head of diversity, and she was saying that she was looking at her, she was watching her son playing soccer, playing football, and he had some Ray-Ban tourists with augmented reality that exists in some markets, and with the voice command, she was able to take a picture. And with however different that experience is of having to take the cell phone and focus, I think Bluetooth has made us think that we either take the picture and lose the moment, or we could be in the moment and lose the picture. So how technology, with that simple change of a voice command that is take a picture, can gain a sense of being there, mindfulness, different from what we live currently with the intermediation of screens. So it's about this on how we better invest that time. And despite the progress we have had, digital experiences can be better. And in that sense is where Metaverse it comes to contribute in the coming 10 or 15 years, because we must also speak about times, because our view of Metaverse in any case is not something which is completely developed today. It requires some time, which we call 10 or 15 years, and new technologies will be developed. But we are in a turning point, in a turning point in which internet is in a turning point. And you asked me about the change of our company. Our company, as well as internet, is changing. Our company also is changing because the change of name. This morning I heard a skeptic asking why to change name, but the change of name would actually reflects is precisely this, that all of our products currently, including or the apps we currently have, will be focused on building for Metaverse. So we need a brand, we need a name that would reflect this new thing, which does not mean we will not take care of our platforms that currently connect millions of people, but those products will also be intended for the metaverse. And today, I think all day we're discussing and asking what is metaverse and why should we care about metaverse. We're talking about something 10 to 15 years from now. And we're adding that although metaverse is a virtual reality full of promises, how can we still trust that these technologies will be built and governed in a responsible fashion? This is one of the key words. Not only what it is, why do I care, but also how can we make this be developed and built in a responsible way? And that's what we'll be discussing throughout this talk. And if you allow me, I'm going to show you a very short video because it summarizes what Mark Zuckerberg represented in Connect last year that gave way to all our public presentation of Metaverse, where he points out some of the things we believe are the main aspects of our vision of Metaverse, and which will develop even further later on. I don't know if the video is ready.
A lo largo de nuestras vidas, la tecnología nos ha dado el poder de expresarnos y experimentar.
Technology has given the power to express and experiment the world that surrounds us with an even greater wealth. The next platform will be even more immersive, an internet where you can be within the experience instead of only watching it. We call this the metaverse. Everything we do online currently, either connect socially, entertainment, play, or work, will be more natural and vivid. It's not about being more time in front of the screens, it's to make that time we already used to be better. We believe that Metaverse will be a successor of mobile internet. We will be able to feel present like if we were there with other people, regardless of how far away we are. We will be able to express ourselves in new, happy, and completely immersive ways, and this will give way to new and incredible experiences. What if you can learn about anything in the world with only getting it close to you? Creators and artists will be able to connect with their public in new ways and really include them in these shared experiences. To be more connected and at the same time more present with the world that surrounds. It's a future that goes beyond just one company. of which we could all be part of. If this is the future that you hope to see, I hope you join us, because the future will be beyond anything you could ever imagine. What I would like now is to highlight some of the points that for us are the most important of the metaverse vision. Well, first of all, what is metaverse for us? And as we said, it's the successor of mobile internet. It's the evolution of social technologies. As we have said throughout the day, internet technologies first allowed us to send text messages, then audios, then they allowed us to see each other through video. And now the level of connectivity allows us to go a step beyond and allows us to have these immersive experiences where what we can feel is that we are sharing a space, or that we're sharing with another person beyond just what 2D experience allows with a screen in the middle. So it's something very distinctive, and something that is important to clarify is that metaverse goes beyond just wearing a device for virtual reality and disconnect from the physical world. That's one part of the spectrum of metaverse, but metaverse includes accessing from a mobile device, not necessarily a device, and or augmented reality goggles to be able to project digital objects, and this is something that was discussed today, in the physical world, and create these hybrid experiences between the physical and the digital. Imagine, for instance, that one of these devices of augmented reality allows us to guide us when we're trying to find an address we don't know. It allows us to walk and guide us, or translate a street name simultaneously in a language we don't understand. So it has more uses than just virtual reality, which once again is like a spectrum. But an important point is metaverse is not a meta, is not a brand. Metaverse cannot is no one owns it. We always say we're developing for the metaverse. We're not developing the metaverse. For us, metaverse is first of all a connective experience where many companies will be, many industries, organizations providing different types of products and services. And on the other hand, something very important is that it's a collective experience, because we believe that metaverse must be developed with the participation of civil society, of academia, of regulators, of policymakers, of the rest of the industry and the users. People are the ones who will tell us how they want to somehow use these technologies. So, an important point of this collective experience is that we believe that the form of the metaverse, and especially in creating a governance system for metaverse, it does not have to be formatted by huge technology companies. It has to be a collaborative experience where the interests of society and the interests of people is taken into account, not only the interests of the developers. So that's a point I believe that for our vision is very important. And once again, a collective experience. Metaverse is not ours. We develop for the metaverse. It's a collaborative experience. And we see it as the next successor of mobile internet, where the difference is this sense of presentiality, which will be in a great part driven or led by avatar, something that was mentioned a lot here. The avatar is what makes that distinction between being part of the experience, being in the experience, and not only watching a screen, because the avatar will represent us. in our personal characteristics, in our features, the way we speak, the way we communicate. So that's the distinctive part of our vision of Metaverse. Thank you, Paula. Very interesting comments on Meta's vision. What is a sure thing is that the change of name made Metaverse to become go much higher in our knowledge. It makes it much more visible. In the material you sent me, it said that for the interaction in metaverse to seem much more reality, it requires three factors. I would like you for you to share those three factors, of course. And I'll also share one material he refers to because it is public. Hopefully, you can all read it. We recently published. If you visit our newsroom, you'll find several material related to different topics of metaverse. But recently, our president of global affairs or public policies published an essay in Medium, and it's also in our newsroom with precisely the whole development, conceptual development of our vision of metaverse. So I invite you to read it. Most a good part of what I'm saying today is based on that. I'll save you the reading it, but I also recommend that to those who are interested to go ahead and read it and link to what I said at the end of the first question. These immersive experiences, the fact that technology currently allows us to go from the video to immersive experiences will allow us to once again communicate as we do in the physical world, because in the physical world we don't write when we want to speak with someone, we speak, and we have certain type of communication that goes beyond, much beyond of what we say. We have a communication we all know with our body language, with our gestures, the fact that we smile, or if we look at someone to the side, we communicate a lot with the way in which our body signals what we want to say beyond just words. So this is quite characteristic of how communication will be in the metaverse, which I repeat is not a text-based communication as today. If someone wants to communicate with someone else through internet, you're right. Well, there can be a video, of course, but there's something that reduces body language. So these three factors we identified, these are, or first, how ephemeral it is, where I say something, the other person listens, and it remains nowhere. Let's think that internet currently works in a different way. It works with text, with videos that are stored and for a long time, I would say. So it's very different where you could be in the presence of others and communicate and to recover this ephemeral language, that it doesn't require being stored anywhere. I tell you something, you listen, it's like a physical communication. So in that sense, it's very similar to the physical world. The other thing is, and I think that the video, it says encarnación, it's embodiment is the actual word, but it's the fact that we are represented, and it represents us in this world that gives this sense of presentiality. So there's an avatar that can reproduce our gestures, as I said, and this interaction, 3D interaction in real time, is very different from text or something that has no synchronicity. And the third factor would be immersion, the fact that the experience is immersive and there's a sense of presence and of being part of the experience. So ephemeral, embodiment, and the last thing, which is, as I said, the immersion. Thank you. And we saw today, and we discussed that Metaverse offers many opportunities. I would like you to share what opportunities does Metaverse offer in education, in health, and business, and in what projects is Meta working, or what funds is it creating to foster this development? Well, there are studies of what could be the economy of Metaverse. For instance, it has been said that I have data which has the impact digital economy pre-pandemic in the U.S. and it was of 20.1 trillion digital economy. So let's imagine that that Metaverse takes only 10% of that pre-pandemic. So we would be talking about 200 billion if we only consider 10%. But in a recent study, we commissioned to an independent consultant, which you can also see, it's part of the essay. It speaks about 3 trillion in 1 decade. That would be the economy in Metaverse. 3 trillion in 1 decade. So we can see there's a huge economic opportunity, but there's also a social opportunity, as you said, health and education. In education, I'm sure we can all imagine the difference between learning with practice or hands-on compared to what we do today, learning in a more passive way, taking in information, compared to, as we saw in the video, imagine learning, having the experience of learning history and having the experience, real experience of what could have been being part of a battle of, or in a historical situation. Imagine learning about, even about math in immersive experiences, anatomy, learning how the body works. There's even a revolution in education and the way in which you learn, because, as we said previously, Metaverse will allow for physical distance to overcome that distance in some cases, and also for personal distance. Imagine going to a university where it's impossible, either because someone cannot commute or how this can reduce costs. What we launch is a fund of $150 million to fund some projects. For instance, there's one called Prison VR, which is a project led by an former professor. She designed a curricula for 8th to 11th grade students, which is being tested in Ohio, which will be taken to other cities. Going forward, there's another project called Victory XR, and this creates twin campuses. A campus of one university is created in the immersive world where students can meet either for social things or educational matters. And this could reduce or bring down barriers for many who otherwise wouldn't have access to an educational opportunity. And having said this, it's also very important for us because it's very important. And as a matter of fact, then I want to refer to that, which is accessibility, because obviously many of these experiences require having a device. And someone mentioned that the need to have a device inevitably means a cost. So you will have to spend something. And this implies in many cases a barrier. Someone has to spend to have the device, and that's already a barrier we want to make as accessible as possible. However, we know there's a issue with accessibility to unblock the educational possibility. We talk about education, and it's easy to think how this can help in training physicians, training in surgeries, doctors who otherwise couldn't be trained. Let's think about training that could even save lives, not exposing someone or minimizing human error with this type of training. There are already studies regarding other uses beyond education and training and health, such as telling someone where the defibrillators are, the closest defibrillators or ADs, or think about how to teach a new mom to breastfeed. So there's a number of use that can improve health services with virtual reality. And then something else we have discussed widely today, which is the business opportunities for creators and developers. Because if we think about today's internet, something that it brought us, well, it brought it to many SMEs and many creators, is the possibility to do business without the need of a loan from a bank or without having access to advertisement or making it accessible. They could have presence online now and generate business that they wouldn't have been able to if internet did not exist. So this will be potentiated by Metaverse. We see our current role as of creating the conditions. We are focused in developing devices and thinking about which are the creative tools for these creators to be able to generate their business in the metaverse. We are focused on how to help them create businesses. But the reality is that the potential, the experience the users will have, will be generated by the creators. They will exploit this potential, and they are the ones who, in fact, will give the dimension of this potential, what the creators and developers do. And we're also discussing monetization. We can also think, how will the creators monetize in the metaverse? And you might think, well, creators, there'll be many types. There'll be product creators, digital goods, there will be creators of experiences, there will be creators of these virtual worlds. And the important thing there is how in the metaverse each one can find the business model that best fits their needs. It could be subscription, advertisement, sales of goods, and even business models that are of the metaverse specifically that we currently cannot understand with its equal in the physical world. And also the businesses will be creators. And we have seen that today. Businesses that create NFTs, those that create experiences, that sell experiences, that sell in the physical world and in the digital world as well. And we were asked, how will you monetize how will you monetize metaverse? And we're actually in a very early stage of that. And we are in fact focused in developing the hardware to allow for these experiences. But we can think that we're in a very early stage, but we can think that there will be creative tools that will provide to the creators. We can think about the sale of digital goods. And advertisement has allowed to maintain the free internet products. So we can think about instances of paid products, but there can also be instances of free products in metaverse that are paid by publicity, or the sale of hardware or hardware development could be another way of monetization. However, the most important thing is how the creators and the developers, not the big developers, but independent developers, the smaller developers that will create these virtual worlds and will unblock Metaverse's potential. Thank you. This morning in the first talk, those who spoke, and let's say a company that hasn't had been around or hasn't been around for a long time and not very big, they said a concern they had, or their peers, is for Metaverse to be open. So the question is about what are the companies that are leading this, what are they doing to achieve the goal to make Metaverse as open as possible. And what are they doing as far as governance? How to ensure governance in Metaverse? Well, our vision of Metaverse clearly, and as said by Mark, and I reiterate, for there to be no doubts, Meta will not operate Metaverse. Same way there's no Internet of Google or Internet of Microsoft, the same way Metaverse will not be a product uh, as Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp is, which are applications in themselves, or the way there's operational systems in other companies. That is not it. Metaverse is more similar to internet, and what we'll see is a number of interconnected services, which, as someone said today, that it could be in to be in different jurisdictions will require the creation of public and private standards, and the interoperability is is a key matter. I can tell you how we see metaverse in this regard. We have made an analogy with the building, where each story is held by the story below. So we can talk about the foundation, and the foundation is hardware, protocols, and standards. We can talk about the lower story. These are platforms and networks. So built on top of these standards and protocols that will have to be developed, platforms and networks will create these virtual worlds, and on top of these services will be the experiences. That will be the first floor of this building. Experiences is what the user will connect to. For instance, in our case, it would be Horizons, which is our application for the users to visit together with the virtual reality device to visit this world. But that's how we see it. And what connects these different stories is the interoperability. And the reality is that this is not an absolute, not everything has to be interoperable, but yes, at a substantial level of interoperability. So we will have this fragmented metaverses. Obviously, we won't have one metaverse where, for instance, what we discussed today is that if someone buys a digital good, how can that person take that good to other virtual spaces? That would require interoperability standards, otherwise this won't happen. We also think we had an example of two friends that want to go to a concert, and they visit through Horizons, but through different points to the metaverse. If the links cannot take them to a common place, they won't be able to go together to a concert. Therefore, there clearly has to be a level of substantial interoperability to not have this fragmentation that we see that sometimes happens with internet. And there's something important here in terms of interoperability, which is the underlying value as far as social values. An open metaverse and interoperable, well, somehow will represent those places where there's still conviction that internet is interoperable compared to metaverse that reflects those places where internet is closed and fragmented. So this is very important, for this will model the future of the experience that generations to come will have. So interoperability is a very critical matter. You also spoke about governance. Of the material you sent me, I saw that these big companies that are leading, and I'm sure there are small companies, have some type of association where they are discussing these these issues and the policies to be developed. They even refer to problems, as we saw today. Every time we think about metaverse, more and more complications come about legal matters. So, as I said, speaking about interoperability, we will have to have whatever standards we can develop will somehow determine the degree of interoperability of this metaverse vision. On the other hand, I could tell you about some of our products, but if we spoke about how to develop these standards, today someone spoke about what happens with misconducts in a case of assault or something like that. You can think that these experiences could be much more similar to the physical world than the experience that we currently have in social media, in internet, precisely because of what we said that first, how ephemeral the education is. When we think about the management behavior in social media is given by content that exists, that is stored, it's very different of compared to how we can think of an experience where there's interaction, real time, real life experience, and not necessarily of content that is stored somewhere. So we must think about this more as an experience and creating standards and rules in different way to what the rules for social media. And we give an example of
There is a virtual bar, imagine that, and two friends go to the bar because they have been told that there are very good discussions about topics, current topics, social current topics, and when they get in, they realize there is a place what they have there is abusive language and people discussing or arguing in an abusive way. They leave and report that, and then you wonder, what are the rules to resolve a situation like this? What is the responsibility of the creator of the virtual bar? What is the responsibility of the one who hosts the virtual bar? And then you start thinking that the rules should be similar to the way a bar functions or operates in the real world, more than as how certain digital services work. But what is clear is that developers have to create rules. Some of them could be inspired on current cases going on online, and others maybe there will be new cases and really the rules do not exist yet. And then something else that we say is that beyond the list of rules that these are the do's and these are the don'ts, because sometimes are not so very practical, it's how the creators of these virtual spaces think about mechanisms to encourage the desirable social behaviors, thinking that this is closer to the physical world. We all know that there are certain behavioral norms and one encourages another to behave in a certain way. So how can we do that? Now, talking to my area, which is privacy, which I have not mentioned too much today, I can tell you that probably there will be discussions about this. Is the current legislation enough? What is the gap? Do we need a new legislation? Those discussions will certainly take place, especially as long as new data uses are identified for new cases that today we can't even imagine. So what I can tell you is that once again, talking about our products for the metaverse, not the metaverse itself, what we do think even for the metaverse is that the safeguards have to be implemented today and not later. We have to start thinking today about the prevention mechanisms because later on, it might be late. So, for instance, I can give you examples of products, but first, for to develop our virtual reality products, we have created principles that are published. We have in principles of responsible innovation. These principles, I can list them to you briefly. They are four. One is having people at the center. We believe that the value of a product or business is the value that it gives to people. Second is to give significant controls. For us, it is very important for people to have control over the way in which their data are used, not just transparency, but control as well. Consider all, something very important for the metaverse, which is inclusion. How are we going to be able to include communities that have been traditionally marginalized, that have to be present in a way that they feel safe in the metaverse? And the last principle is not to surprise people. We have to be transparent in the way our products work so that people are not surprised with their use, and that the use is not unexpected. Regarding rules, somebody said that there's nothing deterministic in how technology works. Technology is not good or bad, and we have seen with the internet that the bad use or misuses of technology will happen, and what we try to do is to maximize what's good and minimize the bad. And in this sense, we think how, in terms of privacy, to minimize the use of data, how to incorporate what we call privacy enhancing technologies, technologies that are embedded in the products that will allow to maintain the privacy protection. We have a global privacy program. I could talk a lot about privacy, but at least for you to know how we think about it, how we are dealing with this today when developing each of our products. And then how the collaborative construction of rules for the metaverse will be like. That in coming to an end, and this question is related to the previous one, we have seen that each development, each activity that takes place in the metaverse has legal consequences, especially in terms of privacy and safety. So in this sense, I wanted to ask you specifically about the products that you are developing, that you already have in the market. What are you doing? How are you regulating this, or what options are you giving within these products to prevent, for instance, that when you are in the bar, that someone listens to you and that conversation is not recorded somewhere? Something else that I think is interesting to see what distance, how close an avatar can get to you. Something else that we are doing each of our products or services regarding privacy, part of our global privacy program and our accountability program, has to do with a process called privacy review, in which we identify the privacy risks and we mitigate them. Of course, I could talk for hours about this, but for you to know that this exists, and it gives origin to many of the safeguards that we use today. For instance, we talk about interoperability and others, and they say, well, Quest, for instance, does not store voice sound, only for a very brief period that allows a person to report some abusive behavior, and because of safety issues, and this is saved in the device, not in our server. So with this means that when at the moment there is no report, that is immediately deleted. In the Raven stories, for instance, what has been done is work to minimize data gathering by default. And this was the result not just of the privacy review process, but many conversations with academia, the civil society, the regulators, and for instance, to see how to signal that the device is recording. Because a very important issue with these kinds of technology is the bystander situation, not just the user, but the one that has captured the data in these devices. So the bystander situation, how to signal that this is happening. What you were mentioning about the personal space, we have created a safety measure that allows someone to activate this personal space so that nobody can get close to the avatar more than a certain distance. We have recently announced that in May, last month, in Quest, and this is important, something that we are concerned about, which is the situation of underage children. We launched a parental control so that when someone who is older than 13 years old wants to buy or download some virtual reality that has a rating for a different age between 13 and 18, we ask parents to accept this, which is kind of control, so that these young people don't have access to certain contents in NFTs, for instance. I don't know if you know that we recently have allowed connect these certain wallets so that some creators can show in Instagram their NFTs. This has a feature that allows to tag the creator or collector automatically. But it will always respect the privacy option selected by the creator or collector. So if your privacy options say that this cannot be done, this is going to be respected. So this is the way in which we can incorporate specifications that allow regulating privacy and safety. Well, Paula, thank you very much. I don't know if you want to give us some closing remarks. Let me tell you that this interview was not planned to have a Q&A session at the end, but if anybody wants to make a reflection, you can go ahead and do so. Otherwise, I am going to be around. Well, with this, we come to a very interesting day, a morning that was full of new things for many of us, and that probably will help make us think. It has been a luxury to have met and to have you as a representative here today, especially in this seminar in which we are talking about the metaverse, having one of the main protagonists. So we meet again at the cocktail of the studios. Thank you.